stop having allegiance to their political party. They need to have allegiance to the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, and what has made our republic so special. The basic human rights and dignity that every citizen of this country inherently has. Not because it's some right given to us by government, but because our Bill of Rights, our Constitution, enshrines that these are inalienable rights given to us by God, that we inherently have as sentient, free, conscious beings. But instead the public cheers on the Republicans as they win, or cheers on the Democrats as they defeat the Republicans. It's an endless, staged, gladiatorial event, special interest own both parties, and they project this false left-right paradigm up as like a movie screen. And behind that, behind the throne, the establishment is able to control our society and engineer it into this high-tech police state.
If you try to let the finance oligarchs who created the crisis turn around and say they're the doctors who are going to get you out of the crisis, they will dig you deeper and deeper into the bottomless abyss of world economic depression, financial collapse, and disintegration.
The Democrats have really done more to destabilize the American economy and to help the big banks on Wall Street than the Republicans have done. I would imagine that the Republicans know a little bit more about finance and markets enough that when someone like Goldman Sachs asks the Congress to change laws as they did in the 90s to do away with position limits on the futures contracts, the Republicans would have said, no way, that's completely inconsistent with any notion of a fair market. But the Democrats, I have a feeling, are just not financially literate enough to say no. And I think that Goldman has very shrewdly positioned themselves with the Democrats, because the Democrats typically, like many NGOs that I've run into, they seem to have a complete inability to comprehend these issues of markets and finance and how it relates to social justice. So under the Democrats, we also saw the repeal of Glass-Steagall.
Glass-Steagall said there's an inherent conflict of interest between the commercial banking side, which is the lending side, and the investment banking side, which is taking an ownership position. And we have to end this conflict of interest by separating these two entities. You can have investment banks and you can have commercial banks, but they have to be separate.
Do you think that the repeal of Glass-Steagall was a tragic mistake?
No, I don't think so. You could be a commercial bank like Chase Manhattan, or you could be an investment house like J.P. Morgan, or a bank like Bank of America, or an investment house like Merrill Lynch. But you couldn't be both. And as the 90s went on, the screaming hyenas of Wall Street were demanding that this prohibition, this regulation, be abolished.
This was an illegal and inappropriate form of casino. The derivatives were being used, and they were being unregulated, and the people were getting 30 to 1, 40 to 1, 50 to 1, and sometimes 100 to 1 profits on the way up. And remember, derivatives are a zero-sum game, so there's nothing there. It's not like a piece of stock in General Electric or Ford or something like that where there's supposed to be some value. Derivatives have no value. But the very people, Summers and Gettner and all the people at Goldman Sachs and J.P. Morgan who created these things made not millions or billions, but trillions on the way up. And now that these things are crashing, the very same folks are now put in charge of regulating these things and in charge of the bailout, and they are giving money to the very rascals that created this problem, took the profits. The problem cannot be fixed. And this is on Obama's watch right now.
You have so many different schemes and mechanisms at play. It's sort of like after there's a blackout, people in some parts of the country have been known to loot the local stores. They go in, they grab the televisions, and they grab the stereos. And basically that's what the Wall Street gang has done. They've just engaged in this massive looting of money from their own companies and now from the U.S. Treasury.
There was a lady called Brooksley Born. She was the head of the Commodity Futures Trading Commission under Clinton. And she said, look, we have these derivatives. Why don't we at least make them reportable so we know how many there are and where they are? And she writes in a biographical account, she said, I picked up the phone and Larry Summers was screaming at me that I was interfering with the wonderful inventiveness and ingenuity of Wall Street and their ability to come up with new financial products, such as these derivatives.
Brooksley Bourne was the chair of the Commodities Future Trading Commission, CFTC, which regulates many financial derivatives. And she said there's a grave danger out there in the form of these credit default swaps. And credit default swaps are